and it's reshaped my life. My focus on work and career has changed almost 180 degrees, right? I mean, I'm still looking to grow the business, but at the same time, I'm now a little bit more focused on, all right, in the years to come, what's my exit strategy?
Yeah.
Because, I mean, let's face it, when this kid is, graduating high school, I'll be in my early 70s. I want to not be working my butt off then. I want to be the
Mhm.
guy who is able to take him to school events. I don't know if I'll coach any of his teams if he gets into sports, but I certainly want to be able to go to those games and even some of the practices. Tammy, again, much younger than me and doing phenomenally well in the corporate world. And I want to encourage her to continue her trajectory. And frankly, when we were fostering, I often was the one going to the school events anyway, because I just have a more flexible schedule. So I just want to continue and enhance that even more so. Welcome to Old Dogs, New Tricks, the podcast that proves it's never too late to embrace change and chase your dreams. I'm your host, Dan O'Keefe. Each week, we'll dive into the stories of those who, like me, have become first time fathers after 50, or who have made bold career moves later in life, or just faced abrupt adjustments to their norms. Through these inspiring tales, we'll explore how these transformative experiences impact both personal and professional lives. Join me as we uncover the wisdom, challenges, and triumphs that come with venturing down a new path after 50. Whether you're contemplating a big life change yourself or simply looking for an uplifting listen, you've come to the right place. Old Dogs New Tricks is brought to you by O'Keefe PR, a content marketing and public relations agency dedicated to helping clients craft the right content that connects with the right audiences on the right channels. Welcome to the first episode of Old Dogs New Tricks. I'm Dan O'Keefe, your old dog for this and future episodes. We started Old Dogs New Tricks after, well, a couple years later than I would have liked. I first had this idea when I learned at the ripe age of 52 that I was going to have a child, my first child, and thought, well, that's what do I do with that? That's crazy. I'm way too old for this. How do I cope with that? And as a creative, I run a public relations and marketing agency as well, and am also a co-founder of another company. So, I've got to find ways to put challenge into perspective. And how I started doing that was simple little posts on Facebook that I titled Old Dog New Tricks, First Time Father Chronicles. And I'm still doing that when I can and gathered a decent little following around it. And one thing I'll say that I love is when I'm out and about and I bump into people with whom I'm friends on Facebook and they say, keep posting those great videos of you and your son and love following along. And that is encouraging. And I finally, just a few months ago, decided, well, let's go ahead and do this podcast. And it's called Old Dogs, New Tricks. And the intention is not just to talk to others like me exactly. Now, I will say, I did a little research after finding out that my wife and I were pregnant and found out that only 1% of the American male population are men 50 or older who have had their first child. So it's a small segment of the population, but still a considerable segment. But I thought that was pretty limiting because there are a lot of great stories to tell out there beyond having your first child, which is a blessing and a wonderful occurrence. But let's extend it instead to individuals, men and women who are 50 or older, or in that, soon to be 50, who are either starting something new, whether it be on purpose or it just happened to them and they're rolling with it, or who kind of fell into something at that age and are figuring out how to make it work. And that's what this is. And that said, I'd like to introduce our first guest, Mick Flynn. Mick Flynn is a recruitment specialist with Scripps Media. I should add, too, that he is my cousin, one of my best friends. He was the best man at my wedding. He is the godfather to my child. My child, by the way, his name is Kai Donovan O'Keefe. And yes, a lot of Irish running through our families. Although on our mother's sides, that's the connection. It's very Italian. Bonadio is the maiden name. And I used to look a little Italian until all of this happened, right? Mick still definitely looks Italian, has it in him. And there are a few similarities that Mick and I share. One is that he and I both have now suffered, as of late December, on my case, the passing of our respective fathers. And actually, you can extend that further to the other third of our family. Again, we're all connected by our mothers. There are three of them. And that other third of the family, our Uncle Ted passed away several years ago. Mick's father passed away in 2019, and my dad passed away in last December, December 10 of 2023. So, for better or for worse, we're in that club together. And then finally, of course, Mick found out a little bit earlier than I did, in his mid 40s, that he was having his first child. He and his new wife at the time, Becca. They now have three children. His oldest with Becca is Nora. Their youngest is Pierce. And then Mick is a bonus dad to Becca's son, Vincent, or Vince, from a previous marriage. Did I get all that correct, Mick? All right.
You did. That's good. You didn't call him Vinny
I
either.
didn't know
That's
that
good.
was
He
all
doesn't like
right,
that.
but I will do that now that you've shared that, just to bug him. So we have, we share a lot, not just in the way of family, but life experience. And I thought I'd have Mick join as our first guest to kind of give his perspective as to what it's like to be a first-time father in his mid to late 40s. And of course, he came into it with, I think Vince was, what, 7 or 8 at the time?
He was
Oh my gosh,
4
4 at the
when we got
time.
married.
Wow. Okay. And I'm getting forgetful because I'm old, but I'm an
Age
old
is a number.
dog. So anyway, Mick, what was that like for you? And granted, you were younger.
Mhm.
Well, you're 5 years younger than me anyway, but you were younger than I was age wise. You were in your mid to late 40s, whereas I was 52. But still, were you guys trying for that? Was it expected? Was it unexpected?
Well, for our for Nora and Pierce,
For
that
Nora, yeah, yeah,
we were trying. We were definitely trying. We both wanted kids,
yeah.
so that was something we were trying for. And before I got married, I'd been single, my whole life, and which is pretty long. I was 43 when we got married. Pretty long for someone to wait. I always tell people I just avoided my first divorce, by
Right,
waiting that
right.
long, and that worked out well.
Good way to
And
approach it. Sure.
Yeah. So we were lucky with Nora and Pierce. Even though I was older, we were lucky that we knocked it out of the park on both times. Both times we tried. And there you go. Pierce is he's 4. He's my youngest. He is the buzzer beater. I told Becca that I'm not going, by the time I'm 46, if you're not pregnant, I'm getting snipped. I'm done. But Pierce had other ideas. And so there we go.
That's great. And is that how
Yeah.
Becca kind of approached it with you? Is a good job, Mick. You've knocked it out of the park.
I think there was a lot of just surprise. She expected it to be this long, drawn out thing, but it just happened. Again, we were lucky, and it just happened pretty quickly for us.
That's great.
So, yeah, I went from being completely single through my 20s and 30s into my 40s to now I just turned 50 and I've got 3 kids and a dog and a house in the suburbs
It's
in
all good.
Mason.
You don't have to make it sound like you're defeated. It's
Oh,
all
it's
good. I'm
great.
living in the burbs as well, man. I got a dog. Had the dog first, but as long as he
Mhm.
and Kai get along, it's all good. And then maybe share what it was like when you both found out that you were pregnant for that first time with Nora. Did that come to you
Yeah,
together, or did Becca share that with you, or? 'Cause mine was, I
she
was not ready for that. That was a doozy, and I'll get to that, but
She did. So I drink a lot of coffee, and was trying to come up with a creative way to
uh-huh.
tell me that she was pregnant because we were trying. She bought a coffee, like a white coffee mug, and had something in the coffee at the bottom of the mug. As you're drinking it, it was a heart, I believe, or something. Yeah, I forget what it said, which is probably bad. But it was 4 in the morning one day. It had to have been, I guess, it was around December of 2017. And for some reason, she woke up. She took the pregnancy test, found out she's pregnant, and she didn't. Becca, and I realized that she's not good at with time, knowing what
Right.
time it is. So she was excited at 4 in the morning, woke me up, and wanted me to drink coffee. And I'm like, okay, what, all right,
Right.
whatever. And it was just she wanted to watch. I think at the time we were binging Breaking Bad, so she wanted to watch. I'm like, all right, let's do it. And she makes me coffee, all right, and then she puts this new coffee mug in my hand. I'm drinking coffee, and I'm realizing this is weird, but I see it, the little heart at the bottom of the mug, and then she told me she was pregnant, all excited. and I'm tired when this happened. As being tired at this age with kids is a
Oh, that's a
constant
whole
theme. So
different
it got me
level of tired.
prepared.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, it's just yeah. So it got me ready that way. And then when Pierce, I think for this, she tried to make it really fun, but again, it just happened so quick. So I came home from work one day and she had peed on the stick. It was positive. I came upstairs and then I think she tried to make it ceremonial and just gave it to
Mhm.
me. And I looked at it and, with Nora, my first, I was like excited. Oh my gosh, this is amazing. When I saw for Pierce's, I'm like, well, there's another one. Okay, it's fine. It was just,
Let's hope he never hears or sees this episode, but
I, I'm sure I'll tell him, but it was different. But yeah, it's great. I'm glad I'm this age having
why
kids,
is that?
to
Why
be
is that?
honest with you. I just feel like, I think I would have in my 20s and 30s when you were supposed to do this. I think I would have been a good dad, but I didn't have probably the confidence I needed and just the overall, the confidence that things are going to be
Yeah,
okay. And at this age, it's going to be fine. I know everything's going to be okay. Doesn't mean you don't worry, but I'm just better prepared. I know that it's not about me. When you're in your 20s and 30s, you're still in about what's best
right.
for you. Or at least I was. And now I don't really care.
Yeah.
So this is pretty much
Well,
it.
Nick,
So
I've known you your entire life, and I've got all the juicy details, all the evidence. But in spite of that, I still think you would have been a great dad in your 20s or 30s. And of course, you are a great
well,
dad now, and a great godfather as well. So
thank
yeah,
you.
absolutely. And
I like being called father. That's great. That's
yeah,
always good.
yeah, no kidding, no kidding. I do enjoy that, and it's funny too. I obviously we're not the first dads to become
Mhm.
dads in our 40s or 50s. But again, we are a vast minority of the male population in the US at least. And everyone I had talked to about this prior to having our child or even shortly thereafter, I'm like, "Oh my god, what am I going to do?" They're all like, "You're going to be fine and you're unencumbered now by the concerns
Mhm.
and the immaturity that you would have had
Right.
in your 20s certainly and even in your 30s perhaps financially, if you want to say spiritually, I don't know, comfort level, whatever, right? You just
Mhm.
we're more mature. And Tammy, I should say, my wife is significantly younger than me, but still was an older mom when you consider pregnancy, right? So what's the geriatric pregnancy or whatever they call it, right? Which is horrible name. But she was in her late 30s
Right.
when you know when that happened, and but as a 50-year-old dad, other people will tell me you're going to be in great shape for having a kid because you've got a lot of that life experience either behind you or it will help to mold you into being
Mhm.
a maybe a more patient dad, a better listener, all of those things. And so far anyway, I think
Mhm.
that's true. Although I will tell you, Kai is all in on the terrible twos right now. I mean, it is crazy,
It is.
crazy.
Mhm.
And we have to think about and plan for when we're going to take them out later in the evening. Like tonight, we've got a soccer match to go to. We want to take
Mhm.
them for the first time, and
Right.
it's a later one. Oh man, it's going to be interesting. But I do feel like even though I don't have quite the energy that I would have had,
Mhm.
in my 30s, I should probably start taking testosterone or something. I do feel like I'm doing a fairly decent job at the whole, fathering role, right?
Yeah. I would agree with that. Yeah. I've seen
Oh,
you in
well, thank
action.
you.
So
I'm
yeah.
not fishing for a compliment, but I think I'm doing all right. And anyway, but it changes you. And Tammy, when we found out, again, we had not planned on having kids, and we went back and forth on that a little bit before we got married, even. But we had fostered, as you know, for about 3 years, and those children are still in our lives. We had fostered them 100%. My wife's young cousins. We got them when they were 6 and 9. They are now 18, or no, 17 and 15. 17-year-old is soon to be 18. The 15-year-old just turned 15 2 days ago. But we kind of were there, went, had been there, done that. They went back to their mom after 3 years, and we were like, all right, well, that was great. Glad we could have done that, but woo, I think I'm good without kids, right? And then, ironically, we were heading out for a friend's 50th birthday celebration. And it was on a barge down on the river where we're located in Cincinnati. And we boarded the barge, and Tammy was acting normally. didn't know anything was different. And they started, there, yes, there were beverages on the barge and red Solo cups. And of course, everyone was given a red Solo cup. So I saw her drinking out of a red Solo cup, and I was drinking out of my red Solo cup. And I thought, okay, we're on the same, page here. And got down to the end of that trek, and there was a bar that Mark wanted to get shots at. And so I'm like, I'm not a shots guy anymore, but it's like, sure, what, if that's what you want to do, sure. Got off. They were taking, drink orders. And who wants a shot? And Tammy's like, I'm good, thank you. And I was jealous. I was like, oh man, I really don't want to do shots, but it looks like you're driving, hun, and I wish I could also abstain from the shots. Did our things, and then got back on the boat and got home, got up to bed, and we're both getting into our respective sides of the bed. It's about 11:30, and literally had my right leg swung up onto the bed, about to roll in, and she's like, "Dan," I was like, "Yeah." She's like, "I need to tell you something." I'm like, "Okay," and I was, I had a few cocktails in me by then, and she comes over to my side of the bed, and I was like, "What is that, honey?" And she just looks at me, and she says, "I'm pregnant," and just crumbles into me right there. I mean, poor thing. And Tammy, she's hardcore in
Right.
a lot of ways. And so, bless her heart. Just all I could think to do was just hold her and say, and I thought about it for a moment, and granted, I was I was not 100% sober. And I just said, you know what? It'll be all right. It's all good. It's all good, And she's like, really? I mean, yeah, absolutely. So we went to sleep. And then I woke up at 4 a.m. I just remember rising out of bed. It's like, what the expletive, and somehow managed to go back to sleep. And the next day we woke up, and it was unexpected to me that I would feel as excited as I was, but the energy was there. We were kind of excited. It was like, all right, grand adventure, let's take this on.
Right.
Right. And then it was a matter of figuring out, okay, how long have you been pregnant? Let's get this confirmed. She went to see the doctor, and yes, she was indeed pregnant. And then it's like, well, we're not allowed to tell anyone for 2.5 months. What the heck, or whatever it was. And I did my best to not tell anyone, but it's interesting. I did have to tell someone, and that someone is also, he's already agreed to be on this podcast, and I'm anxious to do that. He's a really cool guy, but he's been a friend of mine for a number of years, and a lot of
Mhm.
similarities to me. He was definitely in his 50s when he and his wife, who also used to work for me, right, and is a good friend of mine,
Mhm.
when he and his wife had their one child, and they have a similar age difference as Tammy and I do. And so I had to call someone, and I texted him, was like, "Hey, you got a minute for a phone call?" And I called him. He called me, and I just was like, "What do I do?" He's like, "Ah, dude, it's great. You got this. It's a wonderful thing. You're in everything I already mentioned." He's like, you guys are better set off, and you're better set in life. You don't have some of the same worries that we all had
Mhm.
in our 20s and 30s, so on and so forth. So that was great. And I look forward to having him tell his story future here on a
Mhm.
future episode. And it's reshaped my life, right? I mean, my focus on work and career has changed almost 180 degrees, right? I mean, I'm still looking to grow the business, but at the same time, I'm now a little bit more focused on, all right, in the years to come, what's my exit strategy, right?
Yeah.
Because, I will be, I mean, let's face it, when this kid is, graduating high school, I'll be in my early 70s, right? So,
Yeah.
I want to not be working my butt off then. I want to be the
Mhm.
guy who is able to take him to school events, and, I don't know if I'll coach any of his teams if he gets into sports, but I certainly want to be able to go to those games and even some of the practices. Tammy, again, much younger than me and doing phenomenally well in the corporate world. And she wants to, and I want to encourage her to continue her trajectory, right? And
Mhm.
so, and frankly, when we were fostering, I often was the one going to the school events anyway because I just have a more flexible schedule, and I just want to continue and enhance that even more so, right? And
Right.
then also, I want to find ways to not necessarily leave a legacy for Kai by any means, but somehow leave, breadcrumbs of creativity so he sees,
Mhm.
who his dad was, and is as we grow, but just kind of leave an impression that I hope I'd be proud of. But yeah, it has entirely reshaped my life, our life. My mom probably wishes that I had done this 10 years or so earlier, but she's all in on her grandson. So that's exciting. And Tammy's mom has been our nanny now for the 2 years plus that Kai's been with us, and she's great about that and just having a blast as well. And we're just beyond that. We're figuring out as we go. He starts pre-K
Yeah.
in just a couple of months, which is crazy to think about. And we're trying to get him used to traveling. So far on planes, he's done fairly well. He didn't do well or he did great as a baby in the car. And about a year ago, he was, acting up on our drive to Florida. So we didn't get many hours in that particular day. But you
Right.
know what? We just did a road trip to and from Florida, 2 days each on either side of it. And he did great. Now, I will admit, we took 2 cars, and he was in Tammy's car the whole ride, whereas I was in my car with my sister and our,
I know. It's not
young
like
cousin. But from what I heard and could observe, he did great. But when the folks at Cracker Barrel somewhere in, Southern Kentucky will long remember our visit there because he was not happy. So we're figuring all that out. We're
right.
figuring all that out. And, fingers crossed that he behaves at the FC Cincinnati game tonight. You know?
Yeah. 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 Like you meant, so much of it this age compared to when you're in your 20s and 30s, if you had kids, you're balancing so many different things, advantages and disadvantages. Like you mentioned your mom, our moms are in their 70s. And the disadvantage to having kids this late are your parents are older
Yep.
too. Like when you were in our 20s and 30s doing this, there's more babysitting, there's more, doing that kind of stuff. You really can't ask them to do a lot of that
Yep.
now at the age they are. It's just not there. So it's like you're balancing the wisdom of being older, but you're losing
Yeah.
help, like help to actually
Yep. Good point.
doing some, and then yeah, like, and then one thing too, like you mentioned, our fathers and our parents are older. Like you're in this weird state where you've got, I've got a 12, soon to be 12-year-old, soon to be 6-year-old, and a 4-year-old. My mom is 73, and it's just you're helping with your older parent, but then you're also got these little kids, and again, a lot of people my age or our age, their parents are their age, but their kids are
Yep.
teenagers, and their kids are maybe going to college. So you're kind of, it's just different. Yeah, that's what I've at this age. It's just a big balancing act from what I've
Yeah.
seen. Like vacations, you mentioned vacations. Like you and I have gone on vacations. We went to Montreal
Yep.
together when
Yep.
we were young, single, and we went to Hawaii. Those were fun vacations. Like those were
Yeah.
fun. But now, like, I realize when I take my kids, like we went to Gatlinburg a few years ago, before Pierce, my son was born. It was Vince and Nora. We're in Gatlinburg, and I'm looking around, thinking, "Why am I
Yeah.
here? This isn't fun. This isn't a fun. Why would I be here? I wouldn't be doing this if not for them." And you realize I'm not going to have fun for a while. Like these aren't. You're
Yep.
just parenting in another place, and but when I was younger, it was so much more fun. Like, and I always tell people, like people my age who are like their kids are about to leave, they're about to go to college, and they kind of have this feeling of, well, I can't believe you're doing this, but I always feel like, my 20s and 30s were way more
That's a
fun
very yeah,
than
that's a
your,
great point. We had some pretty crazy times, and that's great, and I don't regret any of that, and, I'm not done by any means, right? But you're right. We're moving at a slower pace in that regard, and vacations take on a whole different vibe, whole different
yeah,
vibe. Again, we just got back from
you
vacation a
do.
week and a half ago, and it was
Hmm.
constant. We did certain things I'll never do again. Like we rented a condo in Florida at the hottest time of the year on the second floor of this
Yeah,
high rise, lugging stuff to and from the beach. Not doing that again like
yeah,
that, right? Just because by the time you're done, you're sweating bullets, and then you got to go back up to the pool, and you got to have a little key to get into the gate. I'm not doing that. But you learn. But it's great
yeah,
too when you're down there in the pool with them or on the beach with them, and he's
mhm,
building that little sandcastle and playing in the water, and you're like, oh, this is awesome. And you can envision
yeah,
years down the road, being in the surf with them. And I hope he loves water. He's a little afraid of the ocean right now,
mhm,
but he'll play right
yeah,
up to it, right? But could even see him, maybe learn to surf, because again, we get down to Orlando a lot because I partially grew up there, and Tammy's got family there, and I still have family there. So you know, and just being in the water in general, in the pool. Oh my God, he was learning so quickly how to swim. All the swim lessons that he had received already were all coming together. We could see it. And, just that's exciting. And then on a couple nights where his grandmother, who came with us, was able to watch him, for us,
Yeah.
Tammy and I were able to go out and have an adult meal, you know, and when all the trappings of
Right.
that, and it felt great. Right. So it's a balance. Right.
Yeah. It's just like we went so last year we went to Florida too. It was August,
Oh, ugh,
hot.
ugh.
Vince turned 11, which is a tough
Yep.
age.
Yep.
It was probably the worst vacation I've ever had in my life because it was so hot. But then you get these little glimmers of hope. So we went to Myrtle Beach in the spring, this past spring, and it was fun. Like it was like my daughter was swimming on her own. And it was like, well, this isn't so bad. It's not. So you get this little like, all right, well, this is starting to, it's still going to be
Yeah.
different,
Yeah.
But I don't know. I do think, yeah, at this age, it's just like you mentioned how old you're going to be when Kai graduates high school and you really start to do the math when you're this age. Oh man, I really gotta
Yep.
like, I'm going to be 64 when Pierce, my youngest, graduates high school. And but I do like my new life goal because I feel like talking about age, you don't know a person who they really are till they're 40. Like I think 40 is a good like that's so my goal is to make it to Pierce's 40th
Oh
birthday.
yeah.
I'll be 86. So it's like, and if I make it to his 40th birthday, I made it to all of their 40th birthdays. And it's like, that'll be a nice, like, kind of a life
Yeah.
goal.
And how old would you
And
be? I think I talked over you there. How old would you be at that time?
I would be 86 when he turns 40. So I could run for president
There
right
you
then. At
go.
the,
Yeah. Boy, I was
right, but I'd be
man, Mick,
like
that
at
makes
80.
me think, how old am I mean, when Kai turns 40, oh my,
Yeah,
I can't I don't even wanna think about how old I'll be. If I'm here,
yeah.
I'm happy, right? More power to me, I
Well,
guess.
you would be about what,
I'd be in the
93? You
90s,
could do
yeah.
it. You
Ew,
could do it.
I'm gonna try. Yikes, I'm gonna try.
Like what you hear so far? Make sure you never miss an episode show by clicking the subscribe button now. This podcast is made possible by listeners like you. Thank you for your support. Now back to the show.
And one more thing, Mick, before I let you go is, two, we had, not the well, I can only speak for myself, but again, I've
Mhm.
known you your whole life and I used to babysit you and I knew your dad well. But, we didn't have the world's most traditional or, perfect dads, right?
For sure.
So
Yeah.
that impacts how we want to raise our children as well. And without getting into the details, well, I'll share my story. You had your dad your entire life, which is great. But my
Yeah.
parents divorced when my sister and I were very young. So we only
Right.
saw my dad after like 5 or 6 years old. We only saw him in the summers in Florida, ungodly hot and humid. And, it was cool in that my father, for a good chunk of that time, worked in the theme park industry. He was CFO for SeaWorld of Florida and eventually all of the SeaWorld parks for about 15 years. But he was a workaholic, and just didn't see him that much. So in the summers, it was my stepmother at the time who was carting us around and doing things with us. Bless her heart. Love her to death. And I really only got to know my dad well as an adult when he had retired early. He was a theme park consultant for 20 some odd years until the day he died. And, but, there's more to that story. He had been in the Navy and had held a role that we always knew was he would never talk about. And only recently have we started to realize just why he never talked about it. It wasn't that it wasn't
Yeah.
PTSD in the traditional sense. It was that you know, he was whatever he was doing had nothing to do with Vietnam, and it was all the Cold War and very top
Right.
secret. And it was like, holy cow, this is crazy. And you don't learn those things, by the way, until you're going through his files. Nothing there that was telling of anything except that found the letter from the CIA when they tried to recruit him, which was interesting. And that made him a very reserved and stoic individual in his adult years, which impacted, you know, our lives. He was a big baseball fan, but not a great athlete. So, and he wasn't with me in my formative years, except for in the summers, and I didn't see much of him. So I never really got into sports, or at least baseball, the way that he probably would have
Mhm.
liked me to. So, with Kai, I want him to be as active as much as possible. I'm trying to stay as active as I can so that I can keep up with him and he can learn some of that from me, I hope. I know in your case, you're a big football fan, big soccer fan too, I know. And
I like it now. I think I like soccer better than
oh,
baseball
really?
now. I will
Okay.
say that.
Why is that?
Yeah.
Faster, quicker?
I just like going to the FC Cincinnati games better than
They are
Reds
good. Yeah,
games.
it's a good
I
time.
mean,
Yeah, it's a good time.
yeah.
But you and your dad. I mean, your dad was coached you, right? And
Mhm.
he was always your coach for years beyond,
Right.
even as you guys were young adults, right? So you had
Right.
that, which is great, right? But real quickly, what things do you want to repeat that your dad did, and what things do you want to do differently?
Yeah. So, well, I mean, that's all the different things, but you met my father. He passed away in 2019, and he was 69, I
Right, young
believe, or
guy still.
60.
Yeah.
He was a big drinker. He drank every day, which made it, that was the crux of why it was so tough with him. Like he would, and I haven't drank in 10 years,
That's
and it's,
great.
for me, it's been a great thing. And what I don't want to do is that with him. Like for me, they're not going to see me do that,
Right.
like they're not, that's the goal anyways. And so it's, for me, that's been good, and just, enables me to be a lot very present with my kids, things I want to do. But there are things that as I'm getting older, you know, he could have done better on a lot of things. But then I also understand why he maybe was the way he was and why he wasn't around as much. And I think a big part of it, because he was 23 when I was
Hmm.
born. He was a kid himself. And I think of myself when I was 23, like he just
Yeah.
wasn't ready,
Yeah.
and I think it's a part of adulthood is when you begin to look at your parents as like, you know what, they could have done this better or that better, but they're just a couple of people
Trying to
trying to
figure it
make it.
out.
They don't, just like, yeah, they're just so, and maybe the way I like things I do want to do like him. Like I was coaching Vincent's
Hmm.
basketball team. I don't, He's not a good basketball player, but I wanted to do that for my dad. And this was after he'd passed away. And I was trying to do a good job. And it was one of the times I thought, because one thing about my dad, he was a really good football coach. Like he started in Pee Wee football, then he ended up coaching freshman football in high school. And it was probably one of the first times since he had passed away where I thought, man, I don't know what I'm doing. I wish he was here. I could like ask him, what do I do? How do I do
Right.
this? And he would have told me, and he would have. So there are some of those things, but there isn't much I would do like him. But he's kind of, for me as a parent, he's kind of like, kind of in the, I wouldn't say the rear view mirror, but he was his own guy, and
Is
it
what it
is what it
is.
is,
Yep. Yeah. Well, I guess I could say the
Yeah.
same thing about mine. And in
Yeah.
some ways, actually, I knew your dad better than mine. Your dad and I, definitely had our own special relationship, you know, but saw him a lot more in my childhood than my own dad. So, it is what it is. But, well, Mick, we are coming up on time. I really appreciate you sharing your experience as a first and now second time, and I guess in a way, third time father, right? Right.
Almost
Yeah,
time.
no kidding. Yeah, exactly. And sharing what you've learned and your perspective moving forward. And, to close things out, I just want to say that I don't know if you can see it in your screen, but there is a bird in the background, and it looks for much of the interview, it's been sitting on your shoulder, kind of giving me a pirate vibe, so far.
You know what? Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. The reason why I'm here, I'm working at like an office space that I rented out because my kids and wife are home from school in the
Right.
summer, and I just can't work with them around. And so yeah, so it's way nicer than my basement
Yeah.
desk. So yeah, it
Well,
does look like a
I will
bird.
tell you that similarly, even though I am in my home studio, if you want to call it that, home office,
Yes,
I actually just last week I did join a co-working space as well that also has a private bourbon bar on the first floor. So I can
there you
escape
go.
my my child,
You're
wife, and mother-in-law as well for some privacy and to get some things done, and probably have a beverage. But well,
I do like your background, the
yeah,
fireplace. That
thank
looks
you,
good.
thank you. And
Looks really
it's
good.
hard to see. I'm still getting the lighting worked out, right? But this book right behind me is really a neat one that I think it was Tammy that ordered that on Amazon. It says it's Kai. It's about me and Kai, right? And it's even yeah,
Yeah.
Kai, you'll always be my little boy. That's really cool. This is the O'Keefe family crest. that is just, it's hard to see, but a montage of photos with Kai and me. And then the other two things are just dog pictures because it's called Old Dogs.
There's nothing personal behind it. It's all,
That's all right. You're plenty
it's all
personal and personable on your own. All right. Well, buddy, I appreciate it and appreciate you. And thank you, everyone, for tuning in to Old Dogs New Tricks, episode 1. And be on the lookout soon for episode 2. This episode and future episodes are brought to you by O'Keefe PR and Marketing Solutions, creating content that connects. All right. Take care, Mick. We appreciate it. Take care,
Thanks a
everyone.
lot.
Thank you for tuning in to Old Dogs New Tricks. I hope today's story has inspired you to never stop learning, growing, and chasing your dreams, no matter your age. If you enjoyed this episode, please hit that subscribe button so you never miss a dose of inspiration. And be sure to share with a friend who could benefit from these empowering tales of transformation in the latter half of life. Join me again next week as we uncover more stories of those boldly embracing change after 50. Until then, remember, you're never too old to learn a few new tricks.